Laura, thank you so much for
That's all
sitting
right.
with us today. It's great to have Kent Union communicating with student media in this way. So, for our audience members who might not be aware, could you begin by telling us what the role of VP postgraduate experience is?
Yeah, so first of all, the role got brought in because there was no full-time officer that kind of looked up after just postgraduates. So this role kind of includes all the other roles, but in one just for postgrads. So well-being, co-curricular, academic, and then an amazing and unique part of the role is I look after all the postgrads in our European centres. So we have hundreds of students across Brussels, Paris, Rome, Athens. So that's the role in a tiny bit.
Right, sounds like a lot. Right, so what made you run for this role?
So I think for anyone who is a part of any sport or society, you feel a part of the union, but you also feel, in my part, I felt that there was another way you could represent students. And I think, especially when you're a part of a bigger society or you think you're entitled to something, and whether you're in a sport or society, you think you should get more or the union should do better, you then run because you want to be the person who does better. Right. So I think it came from a negative side to begin with. Right. And then I kind of grew the passion for wanting to represent students. Okay. So that's why, I ran for it.
So you've written a blog post about your time as VP postgraduate. You mentioned that when the role was introduced, you questioned the Kent Union's decision to merge the sports role, the activities role, the welfares role. In hindsight, do you still question it?
In short, no. I think, again, from someone who was heavily involved in any sport or society, I think when you see that originally they have someone who's specifically for those remits, you're like, why would you merge them? Because there is so much that falls under those remits. But when you looked on the flip side and go, okay, well, postgrads have no representation across the 5 officers, I think if I was thinking that side, yes, you don't want them to merge because you want that specific attention. But if you look from the postgraduate side, you want that representation, so no.
Right. Right, so continuing. So in the same blog post, you mentioned that the officers are only some of the contributors to all the work KU does. So you give due credit to the various members of staff that also contribute to the fulfillment of all the roles that, all the goals that KU has. So how is the environment inside of the Kent Union, a side which students don't see? To just add to that, you were of course new to this role. You were never a SAB.
Yeah.
So how were you treated by Kent Union?
Okay, so I think from a student point of view, it's very easy to, and I wrote this in the blog post, thank you for reading. It's very easy to look at an officer as the person to either blame or to give thanks to, which is great because you have the positives and the negatives. But that's why I thought I had a conversation with someone back in the postgraduate network, and it was about who are the other staff members in KU and what do they do? We have the right to know who they are. And I was like, I mean, you do because it's your students' union, but the whole point of having 5 officers is to kind of go to them. And it's like anywhere you go, whether it's a shop, you see the person who serves you, but you don't see who's behind all of that. So I think in that sense, that part of the question, it was given due credit. But the environment part of the question, I mean, I was staff before, so I've worked for Kent Union over the last 4 years and then coming into this role. So I don't know, it's a really hard one to answer. When you come in, you get all this training, it's a lot, like you're just kind of like, oh my God, it's really overwhelming. But I think maybe where that question is coming from is I was a student and then started the role. So there was a couple months where I was still studying, I had 2 exams, had my dissertation, and then I couldn't quite give up my part-time job to then start my full-time job because of money and everything. So I think it's very easy for me to go, oh, it's so unfair, it's such an unfair situation to be in. But now for this year, it's going to be that I stay into August, the next person then continues from then. So it then coincides with the postgraduate taught kind of year. Okay. But the environment, I don't know, what part of that are you at? It's just inside the office?
Yeah. I mean, so of course, as you said, as you gave the analogy, rightfully so, that we see the person on the till, but we don't see, the person running, I don't know, co-op, for example. So how, in terms of I don't know how your experience was inside. Are they cooperative? Is it a fun environment?
Do you know what? Working for a union is a very, very strange environment. And I think I'll realise this more when I leave. But you have different workers who have different targets, and therefore different times of years their targets need to be met. So I think when you come in summer, you have people who are preparing for Welcome Week, which is just crazy busy. And then you have some people who are like, oh, mine comes around elections time. So it's this weird environment of people getting on with different types of work and different amounts of work at different times a year. But I think that's the beauty of a union as well, is that some people are freed up a bit more. And so when the leadership elections come around, you'll see how the remit actually falls under maybe 2 staff members, but the whole of the union will pull together and make it happen.
Right.
So overall, it's a fun environment. It's very fast moving. And I think that's why giving credit to the staff members behind the scenes, because if something goes wrong tomorrow, they're the ones who jump on it. Right. The SABs may be the one in front of the camera, but they're the ones making sure everything happens, everything goes smoothly. Right. So, yeah.
Right. Thank you so much. So throughout your term as a VP, you have and will continue to work with the other sabbatical officers. So concerning how your role merges academic, welfare, extracurricular aspects of the PG student concerns, there is bound to be some collaboration between all of you. How did the sabbatical officers help you in achieving your goals?
Okay, so with the role covering all the others, it's also unique because postgraduate issues across academia, wellbeing are so different to the undergraduate. And for the past few months, I've really been trying to learn what all those different issues are. I knew the PGT side from having studied, but PGR I didn't know. So right now, in the sense of the roles working so collaboratively, I think that will just come in time, where once we know exactly what we should be doing for postgrads and how we can do it, it will naturally fall with, like, coinciding with the other roles. Not saying they haven't helped, because as the group of 5 of us, we support each other. We make sure we're all on target. As the 3 who returned, they knew exactly what they were doing when they came in. They knew who to speak to. So the things they've achieved this term already is just incredible. But like Emily writing a paper for Flexible Wednesday Afternoons with Vicky, that then has helped me write my PGT Wednesday afternoon for it. So even though collaboratively I haven't done that directly with them, they have impacted that work I've done. But I think in time that's just going to get bigger, and I think with there's going to be a minimum of 4 new SABs next year. There could be 5 new people completely. Hopefully, naturally, everyone will just work a lot closer together.
Right. So moving on, I'd like to ask you a bit about why you are not going to run in your next year. You mentioned that the responsibility of this role is huge, and you want to see the direction that the role goes in. What direction is this?
So some of the parts I've looked at so far is like well-being across PGTs, PGRs. I've done a few events to try get that community. But I think this year's been pretty much a learning curve for this role, and I can therefore only take it in some directions. Maybe my PG buddy scheme, PG tea break, with so many staff members, we built that, but there's only so much I'm going to be able to achieve, and so much direction I'm going to take it. So I'm going to take down that event community side. But it'd be interesting to see someone else from a different perspective come in. So maybe someone from a sport go in, we need to push PG engagement. So then they come in, and with everything else, they kind of push that side of it. I think the dream for the role in general is working collaboratively with all the others to make sure that PG doesn't have to just fall on the one. It just naturally, like Medway, like all our European centres, every single person thinks about it. I think for the role to really work and for it to go the way I think it should, which will be different to some people, is for a PGR to get the role, to go for the role. Because I've been open from day one and said, like, I've been a PGT, quite an engaged student the 5 years I was here. But I will never know that PGR experience, and I won't, even though I've learned about it, I haven't experienced it. And I think carrying out something to do better by students when you've experienced it yourself is a lot easier than if you haven't. So I think if there was a PGR student who went for it, they'd be able to shape that part of it. And then after that, I think the role would have the knowledge and the power to just do everything for PGTs and PGRs.
Right. Yeah. Finally, you mentioned that you would like to see more people running for the position. What makes you say that?
I mean, I'd love more people to run for every role. I think it's very easy to say my vote doesn't matter, my voice doesn't matter, and what do the sabbatical officers do anyway? And you know what? I wrote in that same blog that I unfairly scrutinised officers. Again, I was in a committee role. Maybe I thought I was entitled to more money for the society or more respect. Who knows? But I think then going for the role and trying to shape it yourself is very unique. So I think more people being more willing to become a part of something to then shape it from the inside is what I meant. Yeah.
Okay, cool. And with that, this interview comes to an end. Thank you so much,
No,
Laura,
thank you.
for helping us understand more about your role and for the reasons why you won't be running for next year, and also more about Kent Union in general. This sort of transparency is very appreciated from all
thanks.
student media.
Perfect. Well, thank you for having me.
Thank you.